Hello, Frizzle Frontier! Allow me to tell you a story. Once upon a time, I read the Dresden Files series and fell in love, and then I wanted to read more things like Dresden Files. But this proved sometimes difficult to find the right books to read, and so I would like to provide to you a guide. This is also useful even if you've never read Dresden Files and you're just looking for urban fantasy recommendations, because that's kind of what this video has become anyway. So we are going to be ranking these books on two axes. One is similarity, as in, how similar is it to Dresden Files, really? This is based on like the genre, the plot, the themes, just general vibes. It's just how similar I think it is. It isn't really scientific. And then we have the even less scientific axis, quality. You will surely disagree with many of my ratings on this axis, and that's okay because it's fine to have different opinions. I really only have two qualifications. One, I like to review books and read a lot of them. Two, I'm utterly in love with Dresden Files and I consider it to be top quality. Not perfect, but top quality. So I think I am qualified to recommend books to people who like Dresden Files, you feel me? So without further ado, let's fill this graph up. The first series I read in this quest was the Verus series. The Verus series is about a guy who can see a few minutes into the future. He lives in modern day London and there is a secret political sphere of mages who are doing various things, trying to conquer the world, trying to stop the evil people from conquering the world, but also doing it in shady ways, so maybe they're evil too. I would say the biggest strength of this series is how it explores the axis of good to bad and how different characters slide along in different ways throughout the series. The magic of Alex is also utterly fantastic. Pretty much every part of Alex's juicy personality can be traced back to the fact that he's always kind of living a little bit in the future and basing his actions off of things that will happen. They're smart books, there's a little bit of mystery, a little bit of romance. Next we have the Thompson series, which was recommended to me many times before I decided to pick it up. I admit I was scared away by the covers. Please do not make my mistake. These are very high quality and wonderful books. Which actually, quick aside, brings us to the whole spectrum of urban fantasy to paranormal romance. Because paranormal romance is more marketed towards women and urban fantasy more marketed towards everyone, I guess. But really, a lot of books just land somewhere on the spectrum, and usually it just depends, is the main character a girl or a guy, which side they get marketed on. So I would like to break down the barrier between urban fantasy and paranormal romance because they're kind of the same genre. Anyway, end tangent, the Thompson series features our wonderful protagonist, who is a Volkswagen mechanic in Washington State. She is a coyote shapeshifter, and she's kind of grown up in and around werewolf packs. And then, when various dramas and life or death situations happen with the werewolves, with the vampires, she often ends up getting involved. The things that I enjoy most about this series is the interesting take on werewolves and their anger management issues, Mercy herself and the way she narrates, and honestly, I do love the way that romance is handled in these books. There's some love triangles, and it's the best love triangle I've ever read. Because it's nice and juicy and full of drama, but it doesn't go too far. It stops before it gets annoying, and wonderful. I like it a lot. Next we have the Alpha and Omega series, which is like a spin-off of Thompson. It features different narrators, but it happens in the same world. The Alpha and Omega series is a little bit more focused on romance than Thompson, but also has some more straight-up mysteries versus the adventures of the Thompson series. So more mystery, but also more romance. It's also narrated by a couple, both the guy and the girl, which is done really well. I really like that dynamic of one of them might notice something that the other one doesn't, and it often gives you greater insight into both the world and their relationship, because you get to read both. But now let's move on to a book I didn't like as much, which is Hounded, the first book of the Iron Druid Chronicles. This book is undoubtedly similar to Dresden Files. It's got nice urban fantasy vibes. The main character is very snarky. However, I thought that this book was seriously lacking in delivering on its themes, even more overboard on the sexism, which, yes, is also sometimes a problem in Dresden Files, but this got on my nerves way more. The main character felt like he had broached over the line from just snarky into straight up annoying, childish, immature, which is ironic because he's also like 2,000 years old. If you want more of my thoughts on that one, there's a whole video of me complaining about it, along with videos reviewing many other books on this list. Links to everything will be in the footnotes. Next, the October Daye series. I'll admit I only have read book 3 of this series, and it was okay. This series is very much more focused on the Fae world and only a little bit on the mortal world. October Daye is kind of a knight for hire, struggling with her own definition of is she a hero or not, but like obviously she is, but doesn't really want to admit it. Because no, I'm just a mercenary, but we know how that plays out, right? The biggest strength of this book was kind of the exploration of the feeling of grief, which makes it sound like a downer book, but it really isn't. But October Daye has been through a lot and lost a lot, and the book definitely shows her exploring that and growing past that and finding happiness and a new family slowly building over the course of these books. I assume. I haven't actually read them. But honestly, what I would categorize as the same kind of vibes, but superior book series, Kate Daniels. This series takes place in a very kind of alternate universe setting, where magic has returned to the world, but not all at once. It'll come back for like 12 hours, and suddenly magic will work, but all the technology won't. And then it'll leave again, and magic doesn't work, and now your car will actually start. And this has been going on many years when we start the series. So the world is kind of in a post-apocalyptic stage, but growing back slowly as people adjust to the magic. And Kate is a supernatural bounty hunter. She'll go catch those vampires and monsters. But then as it becomes clear that she's kind of like the chosen one, the series unfolds into saving the world level stakes. So now, the Sandman Slim series. The vibes that remind me most of Dresden Files though, is like, you know at the end of every Dresden Files book, when it feels like everything is just like falling apart, like no one has a handle on everything and everything is just terrible? That is the same feeling you get, but not only at the end with Sandman Slim books. Thoughtful and witty in a very dry way, our main character has a very traumatic past and is kind of trying to adjust back to normal life, but is really, really bad at being a regular human, which is kind of endlessly entertaining to me. And it's a very nice exploration also of more of the anti-hero archetype, where Sandman Slim isn't really trying to save the world, at least at the beginning. Then he gets some more character development, and then he's more actively trying to save the world. But in the beginning, he's just kind of accidentally doing it, because he's also going on a revenge quest, coincidentally, against the people who are trying to destroy the world. You know? It's fun. It's kind of like if the Dresden Files and maybe Deadpool had a child, it would be the Sandman Slim series. Next, Promise of Blood, the first book of the Powder Mage series. This one was okay. So this one I read because it's often recommended in conversations around what books are similar to Dresden Files. But honestly, it's not that similar to Dresden Files. I think people are just recommending it because they kind of like the book. It's set in a steampunky alternate world where there are powder mages who can control gunpowder and do fun things with guns, etc. And then there's also other types of magics. It's an okay book, but I felt that both the themes building and the magic system was really inconsistent and kind of confusing. And it really reads more like epic fantasy than like urban fantasy. Another book that reads more like epic fantasy than like urban fantasy is the other series by Jim Butcher, the Codex Alera. Codex Alera is a fine series. The premise of it is kind of like, what if you took old Roman culture and also like a magic system inspired by Pokemon and mixed those together, and then played also with like Chosen One and tropes of loyalty. And that's the Codex Alera. It's definitely a pretty lighthearted, fun series, and I love the relationships in it, but in the end I was just kind of like, oh, that was okay. I have an entire video discussing that one too. Next, another book by Jim Butcher, Spider-Man: The Darkest Hours. I think Jim Butcher has created a utterly fantastic Spider-Man novel, honestly. I've read a lot of Spider-Man comics. This struck me as true characterization of Spider-Man and also a very nice playing with the themes, because Spider-Man isn't always the best team player, and this really had him going head to head with that weakness of his and trying to overcome it. One of the things though that I most treasured about this Spider-Man book is that it came out around the time when Peter Parker and Mary Jane were still canonically married. And they have a really fun and loving and supportive relationship, and it's really just nice to see that. Don't worry though, there is some drama because his ex, Black Cat, is also one of the major players in this story. Next, a book series that really does not shy away from the romance, the Guild Codex series. This series has utterly fantastic exposition, character building, etc. for the main character. But the main character definitely has those fiery, strong anger management problem vibes, which can be really entertaining when done well, and here it is done well. Basic premise is that Tori is trying to get jobs as a waitress, but keeps getting fired because of aforementioned anger management problems, and then she gets hired at this bar, which coincidentally is also the bar that serves the magical clientele of the city. So now she's serving drinks to like vampire hunters and wizards and mages and everything else. And then of course she gets involved in the plots fighting magical factions and evil people trying to summon demons and take over the city. You know, the huge. And a big theme of the series is her kind of fighting for her place because she feels like she belongs in this magical world, but doesn't have any magical talents of her own, so she really has to fight for her place there. This is the series that I would recommend most to people who like Dresden Files. This is the top spot recommendation, which is the Rivers of London series. This series, in modern-day London, has Peter Grant, police constable, gets recruited into being a wizard's apprentice with the magic police, and then has to solve various magical crimes, both kind of cold case detective-y crimes, and in progress this person is trying to destroy the city kind of crimes. What I appreciate most about this series is its long charactered relationship arcs, from being close to being far to being close again, and interweaving all of those. I also absolutely adore its magic system, which canonically in series was invented and developed by Sir Isaac Newton, so it has all like kind of these rules and regulations and is very ordered. But then when you actually start poking at it, you realize that maybe Newton didn't really know what he was doing, as, you know, with a lot of the science he developed. So this series has a very nice mix of magical vibes and also scientific exploration and experiments vibes. And for now, that's it. But I do plan on making several more editions of this video, so if you have any urban fantasy-ish books that you want me to read, please let me know in the comments. And based off books that I've talked about here and more, so please go check out my store if you're interested. If you made it to the end of the video, comment with a magic wand emoji, and thank you for watching!